Hello, this is Danny Raymond, the voice behind Ray's Guide. As with most technology companies, CIG sells the vision that they want to someday achieve and not the long, slow, and often frustrating times of Tier 0 and Version 1 implementations. That was the case of the original Kickstarter that we are still living the long, steady march towards. And that has been the case with many other subsystems within the broader vision as well. In each case, the gap between the vision and the in-progress reality sparks feelings of disappointment and frustration. And now I'm seeing the same pattern forming with server meshing. With Chris Roberts' recent letter from the chairman and further details coming about the road to 4.0, I'm seeing a lot of excitement about the promise of server meshing both from CIG and the community, but not much discussion of the reality that we will have to be facing with the initial Tier 0 implementation. They don't think you want to hear that, but the unofficial motto of this channel is telling you the things you don't want to hear. So this discussion is going to be about the asterisk, the disclaimer, the footnote, the fine print, the things that in the years ahead will have a lot of people saying, well, it's just a Tier 0 implementation, and others saying, when are they ever going to increase the shard player limit? Because to be clear up front, most of the things I will be discussing will diminish steadily with increasing shard player count. So, where are we going to start and what is it going to take to increase it? Well, we don't of course know specifically, but Chris Roberts did in the chart from his letter, I did say we'd be looking at the fine print, stated that the first mesh at 4.0 would be a static mesh of just 4 game servers, presumably 2 each for Stanton and Pyro. Now, I can't say how large they will set the player limit per shard, but with just a 4-server static mesh, it won't be very large, and it certainly won't be many thousands that it will take to cause these matters to diminish. So even with doubling every quarter, we will likely be living with these issues for years. And what will it take to get the shard player limit counts to the many thousands necessary? 2 things: having the mesh become dynamic and getting the replication layer to support mind-boggling capacity. Neither are easy or automatic tasks. Also, part of my philosophy of this channel is never to talk about problems without suggesting how they can be better. And that will apply here as well. But this discussion is likely to span multiple videos. So if you think you have some great answer to what I am saying, hold off until the final video when we can all discuss together how to help make the situation better. So let's get into the actual fine print of the issues that come from combining persistent entity streaming with small shard player counts. Let's say we are in the early stages of persistent entity streaming and small shard player counts. And let's say the shard that we are on is called the Las Vegas shard. I'm going to be using names rather than numbers because that will be easier to keep track of and emphasizes that shards are in fact tied to a particular AWS data center. Now, obviously, I exist right now in the Vegas shard, and so somebody standing right here at the Los Angeles shard doesn't see me and I don't see them. That's kind of the whole idea of shards. So I buy a Finley plushie, and the plushie is tied to me and I am tied to the Vegas shard. So far so good. But let's say I walk over to Elroy's and put my Finley plushie on the table. Now, the plushie is no longer tied to me, but did I place it on just the table in the Vegas shard? Or is it now in the global entity graph database and thus will be replicated on all the other shards? But of course, that is not what is wanted for 2 reasons. First, it becomes an item duplication exploit, which may not mean much for a Finley plushie, but it would be a very expensive and hard to find railgun. Serious and frankly infinite repeatable exploit would be there unless you somehow make all those other Finleys unable to be interacted with, which of course would also be seen as a bug. But more than that, think of it from the standpoint of someone in Elroy's on, say, the Phoenix shard. Suddenly, without explanation, a Finley just appeared out of nowhere on a table right in front of him, and it might just disappear out of nowhere equally inexplicably. Despite what is going on behind the scenes having a logical explanation, the player on the Phoenix shard is just going to see a chaotic, buggy mess of stuff appearing and disappearing out of nowhere and for no reason. And so would we here in the Vegas shard see stuff randomly appearing and disappearing from actions being taken on the other shards in Elroy's. Now, let's say I log out. Does the Finley disappear from the table here when I log out? And does it reappear on the table on whatever shard I arrive in next? Well, actually, of course not, for the same reason. The players here in Elroy's stuff will be suddenly appearing and disappearing for no reason and just be seen as a complete buggy chaos. CIG has essentially confirmed that by saying, when they talk about the persistence, that they say, if nobody has taken it in the meantime, which of course presumes that it is available to be taken away in the meantime. So when I log out, Finley will still be here, and when I log in, even if on a different shard, Finley will still be here in the Vegas shard. Now, in the server meshing FAQ, they talked about a so-called hero item system where certain items will wait until nobody's around to make them disappear, and then to complete the sleight of hand, as soon as there is nobody around in the destination, slip it back in. Now, that may work fine out in the wilderness, but as a shard player count gets larger into the many thousands, the times where there will be nobody near Elroy's becomes fewer and fewer and rarer. So if none of those moments haven't happened yet, I will return here and see my Finley is gone. And then a little while later, one of those rare moments has happened, and I come back here and there's my Finley. And what am I going to think? Damn buggy mess is what I'm going to think. So honestly, this whole hero item idea is highly likely to cause more problems than it solves, and thus should be reserved to just the items that must travel with the player. Apart from that, if you want it to travel with you from shard to shard, you are likely going to have it in a stored ship, hangar, hab, inventory, or on your person. Other than that, with very few exceptions, things will follow the Vegas shard rule. What happens in the Vegas shard stays in the Vegas shard. And that means things far more consequential than our Finley example. The corpse that you want to get your stuff back from, the ship that you destroyed and want to get salvage from, the loot crate that you stashed and hoping to get back to it, the buggy you parked outside the outpost. They will all follow the Vegas shard rule, or the game will look like a buggy mess. Which leads to the great asterisk that must be attached to persistent entity streaming, but nobody is adding it or talking about it. And that is, the promised level of persistence will only apply in cases where you return to the same shard. Because if what happens in the Vegas shard stays in the Vegas shard, then the only way for the Finleys, bodies, wrecks, dropped weapons, and coffee cups to still be there is for you to stay in the Vegas shard too. Now, when shards can host thousands of players and serve entire continents worth of players, such as a North America or European shard, then returning to the same shard is obvious, if not automatic. But at the start, when a shard has maybe 100 players, returning to the same shard might be difficult to impossible. And these Vegas shard problems can get complicated. For example, let's take an example from my Pyro Fleet video. We had Liberator Larry and Hornet Harry. Harry lets Larry have his Hornet for Larry to reposition. When Harry then logs out in Starfarer Sherry's ship, as we said in the other video, there needed to be a way for the Hornet to persist on the Liberator so that Larry can complete the repositioning. But let's say that when Harry logs back in, Starfarer Sherry isn't in the Vegas shard anymore. She's in the Reno shard because she wanted to do some business with Merchantman Mary. So where is Harry, and how does he get back to his Hornet? Does his Hornet mysteriously vanish from Liberator Larry's deck and appear in the Reno shard where? I see two possibilities. Harry gets to the Aesop Turtle in the Reno shard, at which point he files a claim and the Hornet on Liberator Larry's deck becomes owned by the insurance company. Or Harry gets to a station with Habs, logs out, and then enters the game manipulating his party list so that he ends up in the same shard with Hit Larry and his Hornet. And then we can go further with the case of Javelin Jerry, whose ship is full of other players. If he logs out in the Vegas shard from the Javelin, we have been told that the ship persists because the other players can't just be dumped into space. But what if Jerry wants to log back into the San Francisco shard? Are all these other players snapped to a different shard and suddenly lost from all their persistent items? Or is Jerry prevented from being able to check out his Javelin until his crew check it in and store the Javelin at an Aesop terminal? Again, all this messy stuff diminishes greatly once the shards cover entire continents, and returning to the North American shard is as automatic for me as returning to the North American server region is now. But for the likely years until shards can be that large, we're going to have to regularly deal not just with the Vegas shard issues, but also with another set of issues I will call the Seattle shard issues, and they will be discussed in my next video. Now for an update on our Grow the Channel Ship giveaways. First, we have the short-term giveaway of the Bar Citizen World Tour participation card autographed by Chris and Sandy Roberts that is running just for videos between June 15th and July 31st of 2022. Then we have the Big Ship giveaway. As of recording, we are at 75% of the subscriber goal and 73% of the membership goal to give away to some lucky player their choice of the Anvil Liberator, the shipping ship for shipping your ships, or the Misk Odyssey, the long-length lookabout launcher lorry. One entry per video, subscribers are entered automatically, and if the winner is a a subscriber as of the publication date of the winning video, and at the drawing time, they will win both the Liberator and the Odyssey. For non-members, just subscribe and comment with the secret word. And the secret word for this video is the name of the Javelin owner. Fly safe, keep it real, and I'll see you in the verse. This is Danny Raymond for Ray's Guide.